everyone, and welcome to a new video. Today we're going to be looking at everyone's most hated Nintendrone yet again, Harmon Smith, as his racism towards anything not Japanese-made shows through. Now, I'm watching this video blind because I feel that it'll make my commentary over his blatant horseplop that much better, but we'll see. Begin, Harmon.
Japanese RPGs are and always have been far superior to Western RPGs. This really needs to be acknowledged in the community because for the past 20 years, it does feel like the pervasive narrative among game journalists in particular is that Western RPGs are far superior to Japanese RPGs. Or more specifically, there are certain Western RPGs that are better than everything else in the industry, right? We've seen this most recently with Baldur's Gate 3 and the weird blind worship that game got. But I think this also extends to games such as Fallout New Vegas, Skyrim, Fallout 3, Oblivion, right? Knights of the Old Republic, right? Ultima, Jade Empire, the Mass Effect games, right? These games are in no way good, innovative, or fun.
I'm sorry, did Harmon just say Ultima isn't innovative? Harmon, without Ultima, even though I agree with you about it not being fun, until Ultima 6 to False Prophet anyway, those games weren't fun, but don't you dare say that the Ultima games aren't innovative. The other games, apart from Fallout 3 and the two Elder Scrolls games he's mentioned, I haven't played that much of the other ones, but to be fair, neither has Harmon, so the fact he's sitting here, talking about games that he has never played and has no interest whatsoever in checking out and playing, and saying that they're inferior to Japanese RPGs, which are a completely different beast altogether from Western RPGs, is very insulting. It would be like me criticizing, say, a religious person for believing in a religion or a deity, or what have you, without understanding why they came to believe in that religion, deity, or what have you. It would be like me criticizing atheists for not believing in gods or religions or what have you without getting to know them first. It's very arrogant and presumptuous to say something about anything when you have not invested any time into what it is you're talking about, and Harmon hasn't touched a single one of those games, I guarantee you that much. Also, I find it very odd and suspicious how he didn't bring up Elden Ring here, another game that lives in his head rent-free just like Baldur's Gate 3 and Pal World. Maybe it's because it's also by a Japanese developer? Watch, I promise you, he'll bring Elden Ring up later on in this video. If he doesn't, then I'll buy a hat and then eat it. Oh, and another thing to consider about the Ultima games is that they came out over 30 to 40 years ago. Sorry for the belch. The Ultima games did most of what we love about RPGs today first, be they Western or Japanese, and the fact that Harmon here isn't showing them any respect is fucking irritating. Now, while the Ultima games have aged rather poorly, we must still respect them as being important pieces of video game history, especially in regards to RPGs. One other thing, Harmon. What do you mean blind worship Baldur's Gate 3 got? You mean because it was voted on for GOTY 2023, which it won, rightfully so? Since you didn't play it, it sounds like you assume no one else did either, so it sounds like you're projecting.
Mass Effect, in my opinion, is the franchise that kicked off woke culture in gaming. If you actually pay attention to the lore and really take in what they're trying to tell you, it becomes very, very apparent that the game is pushing woke values onto the audience. I saw someone try to argue that, nobody cared about wokeness in Mass Effect because the writing was good. But the reality is, no, the writing in Mass Effect was not good, right? The reality is, Mass Effect was always pushing woke culture onto you before that was mainstream. Mass Effect was extremely progressive for its time, right? It went out of its way to shit on its token conservative character, Ashley, and try to venerate the alien species, the dominant alien species in this game are magic lesbian space elves. That's Mass Effect. right? One of the most woke games I've ever played in my life.
And here we go with Harmons Homophobia. Look, man, I don't like woke culture either. In fact, I hate it more than you do, I'm sure. But Mass Effect came out in 2012, long before the woke stuff was mainstream, as you said, Harmon. But what you're whining about wasn't being forced onto players at the time. No one forced you to go and find the lesbian alien woman. No one made you do that. You had to do it yourself, I think. I don't know, I've never played Mass Effect even though I really want to. But Harmon, Nintendo has also been going woke for the past couple of years now. They've been forcing woke language into their games for a while now. For example, craftsperson instead of craftsman or craftswoman, snow person instead of snowman. Both words that roll right off the tongue far better than craftsperson and snow person. So how come you're not bitching at Nintendo when they do the same? Oh wait, that's right, Harmon is the Nintendo Nazi. My bad, folks, that was my bad.
Right? To me, I think after 2014 is when people started noticing things and started pointing things out, because Dragon Age Inquisition is something that like game journals tried really hard to make a thing. It was the game of the year for 2014. Not that game of the year means anything.
I'm gonna stop you right there, Harmon, because game of the year absolutely does mean something to you, because you still haven't stopped bitching about Baldur's Gate 3 winning Game of the Year 2023. The same goes for Elden Ring. But Baldur's Gate 3 beating out both Super Mario Bros. Wonder and The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, it did so rightfully, as neither Super Mario Bros. Wonder nor Tears of the Kingdom truly did anything to warrant winning GOTY 2023.
But it was the game that was pushed very aggressively during that period, because that was a more modern woke game compared to Mass Effect, and people rejected it. Hardcore fans, acknowledged it as one of the most disappointing games in the franchise, right? People were not happy about Dragon Age Sisquisition, right? People acknowledged that game had a problem with its politics. And now, 10 years later, in most games, people are beginning to notice like these kind of issues.
Now, I haven't really played Dragon Age Inquisition, so I can't say anything about it. But Harmon, don't act like Japanese RPGs or even Japanese video games in general don't do that woke crap either. What about Birdo from Super Mario Bros. 2? She's a man in Japan, but likes cross-dressing. Is that not something that's woke by your definition? What about the one guy who is dressed up like a woman in Class of Heroes 2? I don't know his name, unfortunately, but I know that he's in that game, and he's dressed like a woman. Anyways, I looked high and low on the internet for info about wokeness on Dragon Age Inquisition, and I found only a few people talking about wokeness. But one other thing I'd like to ask Harmon is if he even knows what the word cis means. Now, I fucking hate the politically correct crowd myself, but cis is short for cisgendered, which is the politically correct term for someone who agrees with the gender that they were born into. Anyways, let's move on to Harmon's next point and get off of this political crap, shall we?
Baldur's Gate 3, for some reason, there's this very dedicated group of people who try to pretend it's not woke. I think the cope is that you have dialogue options, so you don't have to choose the woke option if you don't want to. Yeah, and those lead you down an evil path. Okay? Again, the social conditioning is a very real thing in Baldur's Gate 3. And yet nobody wants to acknowledge it, because that would be acknowledging that D&D is a woke brand, and that D&D isn't worth supporting in general. And too many people have sunk too much time into D&D to want to admit that, right? I can play D&D however I want. Well, okay, but you can't do that for Baldur's Gate 3, right? Your support and love for Dungeons and Dragons has led Baldur's Gate 3 to being promoted among game journals, to the point where they're legit trying to pass it off as one of the best games of the year, right? When really it wasn't even a notable release.
You gotta love hypocrisy. Or rather, you gotta love contradictions. Yes, Harmon, in Dungeons and Dragons, yes, even Baldur's Gate 3, you are, in fact, allowed to play the game the way you want to play it. You haven't played the game, you know nothing about it, yet here you sit, acting like you beat the game ages ago. Besides, if you want to play as an evil character in Baldur's Gate 3, you can do that. Nothing's stopping you. Yes, there are consequences for playing an evil character, but those consequences arise from your actions, what you did. The game never forces you to take them. Now, what I think it is that Harmon thinks that any game that has a single gay character in it means that the entire game is woke, but that's not the case. If the game has a gay character and they're forcing their lifestyle down your throat the entire time, or if there are an ungodly amount of gay characters in the game and they're forcing their lifestyle down your throat, then yeah, I'll be more inclined to believe you on the wokeness. So where is your proof, big guy? Where is your proof of the claims you're making? Citation needed, evidence required, and since you have none, we'll be moving on to the next talking point that he tries to make.
Honestly. Like, to me, I do think that Yamdranos are really, really struggling to keep up the narrative that these games are spectacular, because 95, like, this was one of the best years ever for the PS5 and the Xbox Series X. I was saying that, like, in 2023, like, right from the get-go, like, yeah, this is going to be a big year for the console. Right?
Once again, I'm sorry to interrupt him, but I must here, because every single time I've ever heard Harmon bring up PlayStation in general or Xbox in general, he is always shit-talking them. I mean, just putting them down all the time without fail. Yet now he's contradicting himself yet again and saying that they were going to be good years for them, or last year was a good year for them? Nah, man, you were shit-talking them all throughout the year like you've done every year ever since I had the misfortune to learn of your existence. So what you need to do, Harmon, is A, start scripting your videos and get rid of the dead air in them, and B, start writing down your lies because you seem to forget them all the time. Anyways, continue on with what you were saying, Harmon.
You know, they put out Street Fighter 6 and Hogwarts Legacy and a new Final Fantasy, Diablo 4, and all of that did not do well. You know, Hogwarts Legacy was the best-selling game of the year, and what did WB do? We're not going to produce anything like that ever again.
Not from what I've heard. Quite the contrary. I've heard that Hogwarts Legacy 2 is in the works right now, but who knows? Games get canceled all the time, and anyways, right now, it's merely a rumor that it's being worked on and in development, but I sure hope it is, because Hogwarts Legacy was really fun. Oh, but be careful, folks, because according to idiots like Jim Sterling, Hogwarts Legacy is dangerous. Oh, you put video games before people! Yeah, and guess what, fat ass? I'm gonna fucking do it again, too.
Like, they completely killed the momentum of that franchise before that ever really became a thing, right? And clearly that was because of, like, woke ideological reasons, right? Because of, like, J.K. Rowling and how, like, they can't keep doing this. Like, they tried making the game woke.
The reason for that is to please the politically correct crowd, because those people are fucking insane. Literally, have you listened to half the horse shit the politically correct crowd throws around? They were talking about causing harm to people for simply buying the damned video game. If that isn't the definition of bullying, then I don't know what is. There are multiple reasons for people to not like the politically correct crowd, and their controlling tactics is one of them.
Like with the diversity and, like, the LGBT characters and shit like that. But, like, the reality is, real fans know there are no gay characters in Harry Potter. Oh, but what about Dumbledore, though? That was a retcon, you know? Just like Bridget, no different than anything else we've been seeing. Like...
And you know this was a retcon how? Now, I haven't read any of the Harry Potter books in a month of Sundays, and I don't ever recall him being in a relationship with a woman, Harmon, do you? Unlike you, Harmon, however, I know how to do this little thing called research, and J.K. Rowling confirmed back in 2007 that Dumbledore was gay, at least 3 years before the woke shit became forced into everything. Anyways, folks, we're gonna call it here because this video is getting way too political for me, and I would greatly appreciate it if we kept politics off of this channel as much as possible. And in addition to that, I also have to process the knowledge of losing a horse I rode at horseback riding lessons, which I learned of his passing just yesterday as of this video's creation. I will see you all in the next video. Bye-bye for now.